Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. All right, yesterday's video had a comment that I thought I'd make a video response to. This comment is from WhereCar54. Let me read the whole comment and then I'll unpack it a bit. So please explain to me why polishing your watch from Rolex is bad and or not good. Paul Thorpe and I have talked about this, and he is of the opinion, as I am, that a good polishing job, especially from Rolex, adds value to the watch. Don't you think that Rolex takes this in account when they make their watches? Fetishized, I'm having a hard time with this. Fetishized the unpolished watches. Fetishized. Fetishize? Oh, fuck. Fetishize the unpolished watch. Whatever it takes to make the watch more valuable can be a good thing. Okay, well, let's go through this. So the first question he asks, so please explain to me why polishing your watch from Rolex is bad and or not good. Well, it just comes down to the fact that once a watch is polished, it's polished. And, you know, if you've got an unpolished piece, the second you polish it, it falls in that category of a polished watch. It's sort of de-virginized, and you can't ever really get that back. So even if Rolex does it, I don't think it's particularly positive thing. I would prefer a polish from Rolex over an independent. As I mentioned, I think Rolex. Let me talk about this for a minute. Rolex, from what I understand, uses a machine to they I guess have a brace, and so instead of just holding it up to the polishing machine, they put it in the brace, and they're able to give it a uniform polish. So, you know, all four lugs are going to be polished the same amount. So it's going to give it a really uniform polish. Whereas, you know, if you're just doing it by hand with you know, the spinning polishing wheel, you really just have to eyeball it. Like I said yesterday, you just have to sort of do it a little bit, and you look down at it, and does it look good? And you do the other side, and you do the other side, and you know, it's going to look nice. But if you really get in there with a loop, then you're going to realize that, you know, one lug is a little bit thinner than another lug, and one side has a little bit more metal off of it. So that's why I would only want to go with Rolex to polish a piece. Now, my Explorer 2 has been polished, and not by Rolex, and I noticed that if you look really closely, there's something a bit uneven. You have to look really closely. Nobody would really notice it when you look at it from afar. It looks great. In fact, you could give it to somebody, and I don't really think they'd pick up on it, but you know, I'm really particular about my watches. I look really closely at them, and I realized that after having it for a while that it wasn't quite uniform, and comes down to the polish. All right, he goes on to say, Paul Thorpe and I have talked about this, and he is of the opinion, and as I am, that a good polishing job, especially from Rolex, adds value to the watch. Yeah, well, I mean, imagine having a 10, 20-year-old watch, and it's got nicks and scratches and you know, just the signs of wear and life and whatnot, and you put it on eBay. You know, it's gonna, you know, people are gonna notice those signs of wear and the scratches and whatnot. But if you have it polished through Rolex or not, you know, a lot of people are not gonna really realize that it's been polished. They're just gonna see like a flawless surface, and they're just gonna probably think, well, it's totally, you know, new looking, and for a lot of people, they're not going to really think, there's a whole layer of metal off of this watch. They're just going to think this watch looks new. It must have been, babied with the previous owner. But yeah, so I think if you're trying to sell to the general public, the typical non-watch person, then yeah, polish your watch and then put it up, and it's gonna sort of bring up the aesthetic of the watch. But for people like myself, I would much rather have a non-polished piece that is a little bit, has signs of wear and use, because I could have it polished whatever I want to, but once it's been polished, it's done. Do they take it into account? Let's see, I'm gonna have to switch arms here, but do they take? What does he say here? Don't you think that Rolex takes this in account when they make their watches? Yeah, I think what he's saying is, do they take the fact that the watch is going to be polished into account? Yeah, I think that they probably add a little bit of metal, so the watch has metal to spare, through the coming years. But, they do cut the watches and put chamfers and sharp edges. And in a way, I think the reason they do that is because it's really obvious when you do get a polished piece. You see some watch cases. I know my Orient Blue Mako is a prime example. It's already got sort of rounded lugs. It's never been polished, but it's already got rounded lugs. You could polish that watch, and I think it would be really hard to tell. Whereas the way Rolex cut their cases and their lugs and with the chamfers, a polish becomes really obvious. They could cut their cases in a way that could hide a polish, but they don't, and it's kind of interesting. And that could be one of the reasons they don't, because once, and I don't know if they think that this deeply about it, but, once a watch is polished, it's in a way, well, for many people, devalued because, it doesn't have those same sharp lines. And for people who are really into, a virginal case, that could drive them to buy a new piece. I talk about, virginal non-polished pieces. Well, I could scour the secondhand market, but if, the AD has a model that I like just as much, I might be willing to pay an extra couple $1,000s just to have that, non-polishing. So the way Rolex cut their cases, I think they leave room for polishing, but they cut the cases in a way that if a watch has a few polishes, it's going to be pretty obvious because of those sharp lines and those chamfers they put on. I mean, it's interesting to think, that Rolex could cut their cases in a way that could hide several polishes, but they choose not to. And, well, I'm kind of glad, because it makes, an unpolished case that much more special. And it makes, a case that's been polished obvious. So I kind of appreciate the way they cut their cases. Whatever it takes to make the watch more valuable can be a good thing. Yeah, but that's just the thing. It doesn't make the watch more valuable. It just gives it the illusion that it's newer than it is for somebody that's not really into watches. So does a polish make your watch more valuable? Absolutely not. I totally disagree with that. I think what it does is it hides the wear, but at the expense of some of the metal on the watch. And so does it yeah, it can create, well, value in the mind of somebody that doesn't know better, in the sense that, if you were to show them, this watch, uh, as is, with 10 years of wear on it, and then you showed them the same piece polished, uh, they're gonna choose the polished piece. They're gonna see more value in it because they're gonna see more newness in it. Um, but to many of us, you've devalued the watch, right? Give me the nicks, and give me the hairline scratches, and give me the wear, and give me the virginal case, and let me choose when I want to make it look new again. Give me that choice, instead of making that choice for me. That's what I think has value. So anyway, it's an interesting email, and I wanted to make a video on it. Thank you, WearCar54, for commenting and viewing. And take care. See you next time.